What I'm about to read to you is the second published essay on my Substack page, which you can find from the link that I will link to below. The title of this second essay is Alt-Right, Evolution of a Moral Panic. In examining the alt-right question, including the manner in which this appellation has largely become a term of disappropriation and contempt, wielded by the disingenuous and whined by the brainwashed, I find myself in a weird, even schizophrenic position. After all, I have a personal history with the label alt-right. I was a part of the primarily online alt-right scene almost from its inception, but I certainly never expected it to become a household term. In a relatively brief span of time, my mostly obscure intellectual clique suddenly became altogether too conspicuous and very conspicuously mischaracterized on the world stage. I first began writing for the flagship website AlternativeRight.com, founded by the then relatively unknown, now notorious, Richard Spencer, in 2010. Within months, I was co-editing the site along with Colin Liddell. Liddell and I were also regular co-hosts of Richard's Vanguard podcasts from 2011 through 2013. In 2011, the think tank with which Richard was associated, the National Policy Institute, bankrolled my 2-week trip to South Africa, during which I visited several sites, including the famous Afrikaner mini-homeland Orania, spoke with various luminaries, and composed an extended essay concerning the state of the Boer nation in the post-apartheid era. It was eventually published in the short-lived NPI-sponsored print periodical Radix. Later, Richard Spencer and I had a falling out, the details of which I will not discuss here. But I remained affiliated with alt-right circles, including co-editing a second incarnation of the Alternative Right website, after the first had been taken down by Spencer in December of 2013. Curiously, Richard seemed to think that the expression alt-right had by this time run its course and had ceased to be relevant anymore. He elected, disastrously in my judgment, to rebrand as Radix. What Richard little seemed to realize, then, was just how much alt-right was catching on, particularly on Twitter and amongst 4chaners and other young, tech-savvy people. In 2014, and in particularly 2015, with the emergence of Donald Trump on the national scene, alt-right continued to gain an ever more conspicuous presence in the rhetorical lexicon of anti-liberal, anti-establishment online dissidents. Presently, the establishment media started to notice, with horrified chagrin, that these trolls were somehow making headway, winning hearts and minds to their extremist notions. MSNBC host Rachel Maddow even dedicated a segment of her show to this alarming trend, during which, with a hilarious absence of insight, she fretted over Colin Liddell's article entitled Holocaust Forgetfulness Day, taking Liddell's irony at face value. All of this buildup eventually led to Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton delivering a speech in the summer of 2016, in which she mentioned the alt-right by name and attempted to tie these disreputable internet miscreants to her opponent, Donald Trump. Was this effort at rhetorical triangulation and shaming by proxy successful? Apparently not to Trump, the intended target, who, to the astonishment of much of the world and in defiance of the stern admonitions of corporate media pundits and the hysterical objections of mouthpieces of establishment-backed institutions, proceeded to defeat Clinton in November. When Trump became president-elect, the cultural commissars were left in shock. Their chosen candidate, whom they felt so sure was invincible, had crashed and burned harder than Clinton's Secretary of Commerce Ron Brown's plane, an event felt by many to be a clear and present Arkanciting had in Croatia 20 years prior. Once their disbelief subsided, their anger was ignited. How dare things not go according to how they, the supreme arbitrators of righteousness, the approved, duly appointed arbiters of a brave new world order, had envisioned them going? Someone needed to be held to blame for this horrifying eventuality playing out, whereby the plans of the anointed ones were so rudely thwarted. Heads needed to roll. Soon afterwards, internet censorship and rampant deplatforming of dissident ideas became the new normal. In fact, the Trump era, far from ushering in a renaissance of corruption busting and swamp draining, as had been promised, instead saw the corporate and governing class bare its fangs and prowl for blood in a manner seldom seen before. Cancel culture, already a blight, was amped up to previously unheard of levels, in a manner patently reminiscent of McCarthyism. One defied the seemingly arbitrarily defined party line at one's extreme peril, more often than not putting one's livelihood at risk. As for alt-right, I watched, first with astonishment, then with dismay, as this label, which, accurately or inaccurately, for better or for worse, had largely come to define me as a writer and thinker for several years, came to be Stalinistically associated with everything evil, rotten, disgusting, appalling, and obscene. A full-fledged feeding frenzy was afoot. An officially sanctioned moral panic of book-burning proportions was on the rampage, its enforcers taking aim at nonconformists everywhere, and free thinkers like me were in their crosshairs.